Okay, we're on. Recording.
Welcome.
Looks like we got Don back here again this week.
Yeah,
You know, he's done freaking slacking off and doing whatever it is he does nowadays.
you found me.
So, got a couple neat items we'll talk about here today. First up, we'll dive right into it. First up is the Skydio. So here we are. What looks like a commercial drone to me, even though Skydio says we don't do commercial drones anymore or consumer drones. We're only going to be doing military applications and things like that. They announced yesterday that they rolled out their X10, I think it's called.
Yes.
And so...
and the specs even scream commercial. There's nothing special about this that really stands out as a military type.
Well, and that's what makes me question, like we were talking before the show, like typically you don't roll out a new product after you eliminated a sector of business.
Right.
So it's kind of weird. You wonder if they're going to kind of brand stuff differently, and maybe that one particular that the platforms that they're using for military, they want to just not be able to sell those specifically to consumers, and they rolled this one out. I don't know.
But still, like you said, you should claim a sector before.
Yeah, you roll out a product after you claim a new sector, right? So like, hey, we're branching into military. Here's our new military product.
Right.
Or hey,
taking away from the consumer side.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I'm a little confused by it. So I guess we'll kind of see how it plays out. Skydio's a nice brand, USA made. At least
could have just been a mistake.
So
it could be transitioned everything to military and seen their profits decline because of application.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's the other question I have is what really makes this anything different? Is it really a new product, or is it?
It looks like more of the same. Its IP rating is interesting. A little water resistant, so you can fly it in the rain, but they're not the only ones.
Right. Yeah, flight times same, right? Roughly.
Yeah, 40 minutes max flight, 35 hover. That's pretty typical. Wind speed rating 28.6 miles an hour. That's pretty typical. Flying speed. Its speed is impressive though. Max horizontal speed of 45 for a drone of this size. Now I don't know the price, but you can find that in Autel. You can find that in DJI.
Yeah.
Max horizontal speed with obstacle avoidance though is interesting. It can fly at 36 miles an hour while avoiding obstacles.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
As it currently stands, DJI needs to crawl in order to not hit a tree.
Yeah.
Autel a little better. It can fly pretty decently with its image censoring, but yeah, nothing really sets us apart.
Yeah, so it seems like it's a new product, anyways. Well, we'll kind of keep our eyes on that.
Yep.
I guess with that,
I mean, if that is the case and it is a new project, it kind of solves the DJI Autel predicament.
Yeah.
You want to get into that now, or we can talk about it a little bit?
Yeah. We might as well get into it. So let's throw it over here. So essentially, DJI isn't the only Chinese drone threat to the U.S. security. Meet Autel, right? So most people, have probably heard of Autel by now. Everyone knows DJI. So I'll just read this part. By now, most people have heard of the People's Republic of China-based company, DJI Science Technologies. It's hard to walk into any electronics store, blah, blah, blah. But basically, the People's Republic of China drones dominate more than 90% of the U.S. hobby drone market, 70% of the industrial drone market, and over 80% of first responders market. So we talked about it. It's kind of a threat, security threat, and things like that. We talked about that before. As you know, like you're kind of a fan of DJI because they're readily available. Parts are readily available.
That's what I use too.
Cost is good. The software solution, software integration is good, and the user interface and stuff like that. And they've been around long enough in the commercial sector or the consumer sector that they have a good product and a repeatable product. I don't like them because again, that takes away from any potential business for us. I think we need to move away from Chinese drones. And I brought up Autel to you, not even knowing that it's basically just a People's Republic of China drone.
It's the same company with a new brand.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that the entire time. I was looking into them. I was getting ready to make a purchase and check some things
And
out.
not that they don't have a good product either. I don't know. I mean,
Well,
Autel has some things that they're offering that DJI isn't. I still kind of.
we're going to run into more of the same, though.
It's going to be the same.
Crackdowns come, it's going to
Right.
hit all markets that are involved. Yeah. And if Autel's one of them, why invest now?
Yeah, so that article goes on to say now Chinese drones made by Autel Robotics. Autel's U.S. market share was about 15%. And like DJI, it receives the People's Republic of China government funding. So it's basically, DJI is just a branch of the government for China,
right?
Whether you want to admit it or not. And apparently Autel is exactly the same thing.
Now, I wonder why we don't really see much other than Skydio. What else is there? Those seem to be the top three to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think in that small quadcopter sector, you're 100% right. I mean, we start getting into like the M300s and things like that for DJI, the enterprise stuff. There's a lot like Watts Innovative Solutions. They're a U.S. company, I think, out of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, when you get into the big boy ones.
We get into the big boy stuff, we have a lot of U.S. But the reality is, when it comes to opening a production facility and things like that, we kind of, their profit margins, they can make their profit margins up on small products like that because their labor is really cheap. You know what I mean? So for us, in the U.S., we have to put out a product that hits a niche market that each sale is going to be much higher in costs.
Mm-hmm.
So these drones, we're selling them for 20 to 50 to 100,000. Now we can afford the labor cost and the engineering and the innovation that goes into them. That's how I think the big difference is. You're not seeing DJI come out with. I mean, they have their ag sprayer and some other stuff, but they're not going to come out with a UPS delivery solution.
No,
likely, and they may, but generally speaking, they're going after the individual consumer.
Right. Well, and that's where the repeatability is.
Yeah.
All it takes, you crash your drone once, then you're either going to get another one or upgrade, or there's a branch of opportunity that comes from that. And then even like in my instance, I got my drone. I paid the extra, whatever it costs for that warranty, the 2-year warranty. The incentive is good because if anything were to happen to my drone, I'm now, covered at a much cheaper cost than a replaced drone.
Right.
But if I never use it, they got an additional $200 from me, and that's it.
Yeah.
So I mean, consumers is where it's at. If you want to make your quick bucks and get off the ground.
Yeah, for them, for sure.
For them,
I totally agree. Now, one thing that kind of is interesting, and this is kind of I wouldn't say like top secret information, but it's conversations that I've been purview to from my trip to North Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
Milwaukee Tools
really
is dabbling with the concept of coming into the drone space, the consumer drone space.
See, now
think about it. They have manufacturing capability.
That's what we need.
They have all the manufacturing capability. They have the battery technologies. They have all the being able to repeat and do molds. They're just applying their engineering and their expertise into a drone.
They're already using everything.
It's the same thing. Yeah. It's a battery making something spin.
Yeah.
I mean, we want to think it's always more important than that, but the reality is that's ultimately in the end, a battery makes a prop spin, it goes up.
Right. Can you control it? Yes. Here's a controller. Can you record with it?
But we know they have smart battery technologies. They have all kinds of neat stuff that Milwaukee has. So Milwaukee's.
Well, I mean, just looking at the tool industry, there's a lot of cool shit there.
Right.
And the power just being able to put into a battery that they use.
Right.
And I've seen the difference in, speaking of tools, 2 batteries. One is I think they're M18, and they have the M18 Plus. Same size battery, but when I put it into the tool, you can audibly hear the difference in power output.
Right.
No size difference, no weight difference, really.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah, I think they would be a formidable competitor to that space for sure. It wouldn't take them long to spool up and get to full manufacturing capability.
I'd say 12 months they'll have something out the door.
And the big thing is,
testing.
The hard thing for companies coming into this is name recognition, brand recognition.
Right.
Milwaukee already has a brand recognition.
Milwaukee, Ryobi,
Any of those.
DeWalt.
Right? So once you know one of them goes into it, they're all going to go into it.
Oh, yeah.
Because they can be used at a construction site. So the other thing that they bring to the table is that ANSI or whatever those standards are for like drop testing and all that stuff. They do that with all their tools. Now imagine you have a ruggedized, hardened construction drone to go up and inspect a rooftop or go up, and it uses the same damn battery as your drill or whatever else.
Right.
I mean, I think it's smart. I really do.
Putting that into perspective. It's a lot. It's very usable. That sounds like a really idiot term to say. Very usable, but I mean, like I'm trying to think of what to say. Like it's practical as hell because people are already doing those current inspections, but with cheap plastic DJI whatever drones, they can't handle wind. Like construction workers are out there, rain or fucking shine most of the time.
Right.
And then to create a drone that can do.
And the nice
all that stuff.
And the nice thing is, think about it. Like, what's another couple $100 to add to your toolbox and have it if you need it for a big
battery though.
That's my point. Is you already have the charger, you already have the batteries, you already
have 40 fucking batteries.
All that stuff. I mean, I you see it people all the time who big roofing firms, this and the other. They'll go out and because they have all DeWalt, they'll buy the DeWalt radio.
Right. Oh yeah.
Right. I mean, you can
Milwaukee too.
Right.
You know how many M18 radios I've come across?
Well, that's what I'm saying. You could get a cheap radio; they'll do the same thing. But it's like, well, we already got the battery.
Right.
What's $300?
So my buddy throws his Milwaukee into a side-by-side.
Plus they charge. So I mean, so there's a bunch of things. I don't know. Anyways, I think it's pretty cool, man. I like what they're doing. I like the thought process.
I'm gonna keep an eye on that one.
Yeah, I think that's something we all should keep an eye on. While we're talking about technology, we brought this up kind of before the podcast. This is kind of neat. It's called the Tetra drone, and so because you brought up the water resistance of the Skydio. Well, I venture to say this one has a beat.
What do we got?
And so essentially, this one is promoted that essentially there's a lot of water landing drones out there that can land in water. Well, this one can land on water, which is obviously water rated, but it can also go underwater. So if you look, the props will actually rotate and then be used as essentially a prop in water. And so everything's fully hermetically sealed and is able to go underwater like a submarine. So you're getting two
applications.
Yeah, two vehicles for one application, or however you want to say it. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. I thought that was really neat. And, I don't know what you think, but I thought it was pretty cool.
I think it's going to be great. I mean, it's going to be interesting. You might have to put some rain X in the little windshield if you want to go from underwater to flight video. Yeah, little windshield right there. But it definitely adds a new realm to even what I do.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what controller they use.
Yeah.
After seeing that last submarine.
The old Logitech 3000.
Yeah. I think it was a Logitech 310, actually. But anyways, it'll be interesting. But I want to move on to some interesting things that have just recently happened regulation wise.
Yes.
And then maybe we'll
FAA doesn't know what the hell it wants to do right now.
No, and so he finally got an administrator. It sounds like a head honcho.
For this year.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens there. Get his high 3 salary in so he can retire. But recently, and a lot of people are following this. This happened in the last couple of days. Of course, CNBC, they want to project everything as, with a flurry of FAA approvals,
right?
Many more drones are going to fly over the U.S. sky.
A flurry of attempts. With
they're painting the picture as though it's a bad thing right off the bat.
Course,
so,
always.
Every story from, MSDNC and CNBC and all these other ones, they're basically all just there to create divide. But anyways, it's a major milestone for U.S. drone flights. Paves the way for other companies to receive streamlined approvals. So essentially what has happened is...
That's amazing right there. That alone.
Yeah, essentially what happened is basically Zipline and also UPS subsidiary Flight Forward, also UAvionics with the partnership of Phoenix Air Unmanned, have all gotten exemptions for BVLOS. And I think... obviously we need to talk about the big difference between waiver and an exemption, because there is a fundamental difference. But basically,
My understanding is waiver is temporary to allow for testing, but exemptions are more permanent.
I think it's like partially true. Let me pull up this kind of, and this isn't from a direct FAA link or anything. This is actually off of like some simple like pilot forums and stuff. But if you look at like exemptions, simply put, an exemption is a type of rule making itself. So it's granted to a person or entity in order to relieve them from regulation when no other means to deviate from the regulation actually applies. So they must also explain why it is in the public's best interest and how granting the exemption would not adversely affect safety, or how they would mitigate risk to provide equivalent level of safety. While a waiver, if you scroll down and look here, basically waiver, deviations, or authorizations are specifically referenced in the regulations and are typically issued by a local FAA authority, such as a FSDO. It's where regulations will have the term unless otherwise authorized by the administrator, which is the FAA. So certain regulations, an example would be flight crew members at stations are not subject to a waiver because they don't have those verbiage in there. So basically what has been happening prior to all this kind of kicking off is we've been seeing waivers for BVLOS. And so Zipline and some other companies got together and said, well, realistically, we are in violation. There's nothing that allows for us to have a waiver truthfully.
Right. Just a piece of paper, like
sanction. So what they had to do was prove, number one, like we talked about, why is it in the public's best interest? How granting the exemption can provide the same level of safety.
Right.
So the nice thing about exemptions is waivers are individual-based. Exemptions, while they are individual-based, they are used because they're a rule-making.
Right.
They've essentially
much
made
broader future.
Right. They've made a rule, and so you can use that same data, for Don Bennett Media Solutions, whatever the heck,
apply for an exemption.
To apply for an exemption for yourself. Be like, I'm going to use the same mitigation tactics that Zipline is using. I'm going to do this risk analysis. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do, airspace authorization, whatever it might be, whatever they have in their exemption, and basically be able to say, I want to file for the same exemption because there's already one on the books. There's already data, etc.
It makes it so much easier.
Yeah. So it really does streamline the process like immensely. And I'll just pull up their exemption real quick. But basically, the thing that makes them a little bit different, and I'm going to complain about it a little bit, but by the letter dated March 28th, he petitioned the FAA on behalf of. So it just moved pretty quick. So March 28th for exemptions.
That's insane.
For exemptions, it's pretty quick.
Probably less than 6.
FAA on behalf of Zipline International, blah blah blah, and amended the exemption. The exemption was for all these 91 certifications as well as these 135 regulations, and allows the petitioner to conduct Part 135 air carrier operations for commercial package delivery using an unmanned aircraft. And letter goes on later.
So now, isn't this what kind of shut down Amazon's whole operation with that?
Yeah. So
how the hell did this company get it? But a company like Amazon.
Well, Amazon is beholden to the shareholders.
Gotcha.
Right? And so Amazon said, we're standing up a flight department, and we're going to hire 4,000 people or whatever, right? And we're going to pay them 6 figures, and we're going to do all this, and we're going to do that, and we're going to buy all these facilities, and but the regulation wasn't there in their favor at that point. So gotcha. They basically, for lack of a better term, that department went bankrupt.
Yeah, they got out of the game before.
And they got out of the game. They didn't have the longevity, for the fight. Now, my complaint about this. What's that?
We could see a reattempt.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think they'll definitely come back in. And they were doing a lot of things. They were trying to operate. They were also trying to invent their own aircraft. Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of things. Yeah, Zipline did it, but Zipline invented an aircraft and took it for medical resupply missions in like Uganda or something.
Right.
Then, as regulations started allowing for it here, they said, you know what, we see a U.S. market potential as well.
And they had flight data.
Right, and they already had proven thousands and thousands of hours and all these different things. So, now my complaint with this whole thing is the fact that these guys have a 135. So Zipline has a 135. A couple other companies have 135. Zephyr Systems, we applied for a 135 and went through the initial stages of the process. And then we're basically told by the FAA, yeah, we're not taking any more people. We tried to get congressmen involved and stuff like that, but the reality of it is, there's a favoritism that is actually happening.
Oh yeah,
I'll call it out. I don't really care. You know what I mean? There's a favoritism that's happening with certain companies, and it's very clear that Amazon was not a favorite.
no,
By the
it's
FAA.
all a money game.
Zipline, UPS.
Yeah.
UPS is huge.
Yeah.
They're not going to FAA. In the end, to some extent, the FAA works for the airlines, not the other way around. So UPS is a major airline. Yeah, they don't transport people, but they have a lot of freaking airplanes.
They don't need to transport people to be a major player.
Right. So I don't know. When you see that, so that was kind of very concerning for me. Like we basically got told like, no, you can't. And so we'd be in a very similar position now.
We'd be in about the same boat, time frame wise.
Right. And so that's the real unfortunate thing for us. Is there's certain players that have been kind of blessed, and then there's certain players that haven't.
Right.
And it isn't like we had guys who were going to be our director of operations who were fixed wing 747 drivers. These are guys with 10,000, 20,000 hours. It wasn't like we weren't.
It's not like we didn't know the game.
Right. It's not like we're not bringing the standards to bear. I would say we were probably bringing greater standards to bear than Zipline, who really all they did was drones.
Right.
We were bringing 135. Right. We were bringing 135 quality people into the drone world versus drones into the 135 world.
Right.
So it is kind of crappy, but whatever,
Passed it, but I mean, cool. They did it. People can use it.
Yeah. And that's it. That's the bottom line is now.
Congratulations for them.
Yeah, now it's out there.
Kind of screw everybody else at that
point. Well, and that's the thing is too. Sometimes you don't want to be the first to market with certain things, right? So it costs them. If you look, it was a letter addressed to their legal representation.
Right. So
they have money, they have assets and resources that they can expend on that type of stuff.
Makes sense.
Obviously, as a small company, we don't have those same amount of resources. So let them pave the way, and now it's piggyback time.
Right.
So that's the good thing.
How are we going to figure out who's
and so it's going to be interesting. Are they going to go with this type of stuff and allow for 135s to start up and then file for an exemption, or are they going to move forward with the Part 108?
Right. I'm partial to Part 108.
I agree.
Every part has its benefits and pros and cons, but I think the Part 108 for drones.
I think Part 108 has its place.
It's nice.
Yeah. So that's pretty much all I got as far as news. It's outside of big news for us, and we're kind of in the background of pulling it up, but basically. We are now the proud recipients of a public agency COA for state of Michigan.
Yep.
And so, very big news. So we'll be operating public aircraft as determined by those regulations there. And so essentially, we've done this in partnership with the wonderful University of Alaska Fairbanks and the ACU ASI.
Cool guys out there.
Yeah, great guys. Shout out to Nick and Tom for coming out and performing the necessary audits and working with us through the process, holding our hand through the process as it were. But essentially now we're in a position where, Michigan can now allow for flights, for drones that don't meet that Part 107 criteria, i.e., we can fly above 400 AGL up to about 7,000.
Yeah,
and
that's fucking massive.
Yeah, so
but that's going to be a game changer.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, now we can get into weather. Now we can get into all kinds of things.
Figuring out exactly what we can use them for above building inspections and construction and things of that nature. We can really test and higher altitudes, lower air densities, and such to see what it's going to take for a drone to be able to do certain aspects of.
Yeah, so we'll be able to do high altitude. We have night operations, the ability to conduct night operations if your aircraft is equipped with it. We have the ability to do BVLOS, extended visual line of sight is what we call it, EVLOS, with the use of a chase airplane and daisy chain visual observers, requiring no additional waivers, nothing. Now, obviously, our intention is to add infrastructure, hopefully work with the state, work with the guys at MDOT and other people, and hopefully in airport management teams to kind of bring in some sort of technologies. Whether number one, it's a technology that we can integrate on someone's aircraft for detect and avoid and get BVLOS type flights that way, or see kind of what we can come up with a ground based system. But essentially, it's gonna be huge for us. So basically, again, partnership with the University of Alaska. Zephyr Systems will be managing the COA on their behalf. So essentially, you can reach out to us on our LinkedIn, on our face, whatever the socials are. Obviously, email, web page. We're gonna add a contact page specifically for this type of work. But essentially, there is a vetting process. We're not gonna let anyone on there. The airspace is free of charge. There's no cost to it. However, there's some training that has to take place. It's non-negotiable. There's some inspections of your technology and aircraft.
Just to make sure that everything's safe.
Yeah, it's all about safety of flight. We're charged with managing this airspace. This is a big deal for the state of Michigan. We're in charge of managing it on behalf of Alaska, right? So we want to make sure we do a good job for them. So there's some training that has to take place. There's some, each company has to have certain operational manuals. If they're bringing an aircraft that's never really flown before, there's an airworthiness side of the house that has to take place.
That's what I'm here for.
So, yeah. So, and so just to give everyone kind of an understanding of the size of this COA, it's pretty substantial. Big enough the FAA had to break it up into four separate zones because we go into 4 separate TRACONs, ATC TRACONs. So essentially, awesome. You can see Zone A incorporates the Howell Airport. Zone B incorporates the Mason Airport. Zone D incorporates the Hillsdale Airport, and then Zone C is between B and C or B and D. And so, obviously, we have some future plans to have additions to this as well, and this will likely go into civil waivers and some other stuff later on in the future. But for those of you that want to use this type of space, reach out. We'll definitely work with you and try to get you in the space and flying.
Absolutely.
We're going to be doing some flights very soon. We basically got the green and the go ahead and the green light with our audit. So we're ready to go.
Cool. Let's see what we can do with it.
Yeah. That's all I got. We'll see you on the next one.
Yep. Take care.